forward to hearing Tom speak, and I want to thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
The floor is yours. Thank you, bro. Now, don't make him nervous, okay? Because he's a YAT member. Go easy on him.
This is the first time I've used this computer for a presentation, so and I'm not a tech person. That's my oldest son's job, so we'll see how we get along this morning.
We're going to need to get you louder at the house.
To shout louder?
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me in the back of the room? Is that better, Joe? I met Joe at in Birmingham. I can't remember if it's 5 or 5.5 years ago, but Joe sat behind me in a meeting, and I was just coming into the business at that time. And Joe's one of my heroes. He's been a model for me, and it's just a pleasure to be here on his behalf. And I don't know of anybody that smiles more than Joe. And I found out why today, or last night. So spent the night at his house. And those of you that know Joe's wife know why Joe smiles. So by trade, I'm a chiropractor. And when we went to chiropractic school, we learned that the first thing we had to study was anatomy. And when we think of anatomy as lay people, we think of going into the lab and dead bodies and cutting up cats and snakes and things like that. And the term anatomy comes from a, oh my goodness, hang on just a second, I'm sorry. This programmed me out.
No, that mic I believe is for the camera.
Okay.
So that use the handheld. And Tom, would you mind using the handheld?
Is that better? Does this help? Does this make any difference?
No.
Check. It is working. I increase the volume. I'll be right
Okay.
back.
So in school, we learned that anatomy was something we had to learn, but before we even learned anatomy, we had to learn terminology. And all of you in here are in the industry, so we're not going to spend any time on terminology today, but when I speak with clients and we hold events like this, we spend a good deal of time on terminology, because if you don't understand the words you're going to learn and where they came from, then there's no sense in going any further. You got to speak the language. So we can skip over that today because all of you in here know the language. And so we're going to move right on to anatomy. And the word anatomy comes from the ancient language, meaning to cut up, to separate, to tease apart, to tear apart, and utterly examine. And sometimes when we look at people in the industry, it's amazing to me that they haven't taken the time to tear their products apart enough to really realize what it is that they have to sell. Now, I have 2 articles on the front of your handouts today that I think kind of prove that point. And the first one is that Americans overwhelmingly prefer choices that deliver high quality, long-term growth with guarantees. And what better description of life insurance is there than that? And yet, why doesn't the public know that? And I think maybe it reflects on our inability to teach them what a product that we have that will meet their needs. The second article is very similar to it. Americans think of annuities and life insurance as tools for reduced. Few Americans think of annuities and life insurance as a tool to reduce taxes. Again, why aren't they thinking of this? And as a chiropractor, we fought the medical profession because we were always labeled as quacks. So it was our job to get out there and educate the public about how we were different than your family physician. We had a really good rapport with neurosurgeons and orthopedics. They understood what we did. But the general practitioner fought chiropractic because they saw us as competition, and the public awareness was way down. In fact, when I entered the chiropractic profession, it was still illegal to practice chiropractic in the state of Louisiana. So what we had to do is we had to teach people about what we did. And I think that we are in such a prime position as agents and producers to do that same thing and bring a message to the public that they aren't aware of. The next article is something that came from the state of Washington, and I think this is really sad. 85% of insurance policies lapse without a payment. That's incredible, isn't it? Where does all that money go to? I mean, people are paying their premiums, and they don't even educate their beneficiaries enough to know that there's a death benefit when they go away and graduate. So let's spend a little time this morning, and I'm going to ask for your participation here because I find that I learn more from a group like this than I probably can share with you on this subject. So I want to ask a question. Let's see what we get as an answer. What is term insurance, and how would you graph it on a graph? Does someone have a good answer for that?
It's pure protection, and term insurance is pure protection. You have to die to get the benefit, and you would graph it on a graph as a flat line.
Okay. Everyone hear that?
Like renting an apartment?
It's like renting an apartment, okay? Is there anything wrong with renting?
Nope.
Absolutely not. It's a good product, isn't it?
Yep.
All right? So how would we describe 1 year renewable term versus level term? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand.
She knows,
Okay.
she knows the answer.
Okay. Anyone want to tackle that one? The difference between level term and 1 year renewable term.
I would just say a 1 year lease versus a 5, 10, or 20 year lease.
Okay. And now when we're talking about a lease or a renting situation, what can the landlord do to that lease?
Terminate it.
On 1 year renewable term, that's exactly what happens, isn't it?
Sure.
What happens on a level term?
10 years, 20 years.
You have a longer guarantee period.
And so when we look out at a distance on the premiums of a level term past the level point and a 1 year renewable term, what happens to the premiums?
It's the same.
They level out. I mean, they become one line, don't they? Okay? Now, where does the death benefit? If we were to graph 1 year term, and let me draw this out, and this is going to be kind of tricky holding the mic and drawing. So if 1 year renewable term starts out here at a young age and climbs like this, and level term would start out somewhere here and move something similar to this, can we say that the death benefit is probably going to be somewhere around here? And when we do that, doesn't somewhere just before we reach the death benefit line, that product get cost ineffective? And so what happens with most term policies? They lapse and they never pay a death benefit. So, very few people that come into my office understand that concept. And so they have fallen into the very popular notion that buying term and investing the difference is the best thing they can do. And there's nothing wrong with that concept if they would truly indeed invest the difference. Now, let me tell you a story of a client of mine in New Orleans who was a Prime America agent, and she took the wisdom that she had learned from there. She bought term, and they invested everything else in real estate. Okay? And what happens now is they own real estate down in that Gulf City that they can't sell. And they would like to retire back to South Carolina. They have zero liquidity. So is buying term and investing the difference really the best method that we can do? Now, Joe knows that I believe in term insurance. I have several $million, about $5 million on my own life on term insurance. It's level term, it's convertible. Why would I want it to be convertible?
So that as you age, you can turn it into permanent insurance and it becomes guaranteed.
Okay. And you said a word that puzzled the daylights out of me when I came into the business. Yes, ma'am.
Insurability.
Insurability. Guaranteed insurability, yes. I was puzzled to death why they called universal products permanent insurance. Can anyone tell me why it's called permanent insurance?
They lie.
Hey, we got a great crowd here. They already understand this, Joe. What am I doing here? You've done well.
I give you a challenge.
Okay. Isn't universal life products just a term product?
It is.
Yes.
And what happens to the difference in what you're paying in premium for that product and what actually covers the 1-year renewable term?
They make big money in the insurance company.
And it's supposed to be making you money, isn't it? Isn't it supposed to be coming back into the bucket of cash values to offset premiums in later years? And yet, I've seen just in my short business career in life insurance, 3 people that are having to ante up to put more money in that bucket because they've had these products long enough that it's not, and it hasn't performed. And one of them's a very sad case. She's got a disabled husband she's been taking care of for the last 15 years, and he had one of these universal products. She's putting another $5,000 a year in there, and it's kind of she's in a bad situation. She kind of wishes he would die, but at the same time she doesn't, because someday it's not going to be worth what she's paid in, and she knows that day is approaching very fast. So what about variable universal products? How do they differ?
Now you put the risk back to yourself. Instead of usually buying insurances, put the risk on the company. But as soon as it becomes a variable, now you separate the two, and now you put the risk back to yourself.
I would agree with that 100%. In fact, as I would say, just on a universal product, the risk is 100% on myself.
You really haven't transferred the risk to the insurance company.
That's exactly right. And the same way with indexed products as well. So this is where we're at. There's really only 2 types of insurance sold in the world today, isn't there? And which product have we not talked about? And whole life is a blend of 2 products, the 2 products that are sold. So what's the other type of insurance? We can't buy it anymore. Congress says we're not good enough. They only let banks and large corporations buy it. Anyone have a clue?
The reinsurance. The reinsurance? How?
It's called single premium insurance. Okay? And whole life is nothing more and nothing less than a blend of term insurance and single premium insurance. Now, what is single premium insurance?
You pay a lump sum and you get X amount of coverage.
And how many times do you have to pay that?
1 time.
1 time. So, and how much cash value does it produce?
It depends on the product, but yes, whatever you've negotiated with the company.
And how much death does it buy?
Again, same, whatever you've negotiated.
Is it comparatively, though, to term insurance, when we buy single premium insurance, what's the difference between the death benefit in a term and a death benefit in a single premium? Dollar for dollar.
Less.
Much less, isn't it? And so what does that do to our available cash values immediately?
Increases.
It increases it. So what does that do for you? What does that do for our clients? Gives us control. Now I'm going to revert back a little bit to my doctor days. About 18 months ago, I got on the scales and I was very upset because I was about 15 pounds overweight. And I knew what I should be eating, and I wasn't really violating that, but what I was violating was I was eating too much of what I knew I should eat. Okay? And what happened is those pounds creep up. The average male in America today, at the age of 60, will weigh 40 pounds more than he did when he graduated from high school. Do the math. That's 1 pound a year, isn't it? It creeps up on us so suddenly, and subtly, I should say, that we don't really even realize what happened to us. And really, what's happened to us, we are losing control. Now, nobody in here wants to own more weight than they have to, do we? And so today, I want to throw out a paradigm for you to think about. We don't want to own more money or more material possessions, but we sure would like to control them more. Would everyone agree with that? Just like our weight, we want to control it so that we have more health. And if we can control more money, more capital, we can produce more wealth. Would everyone agree with that statement? If you don't, let's talk about it right now, because that is really the crux of what I think whole life, properly designed and managed, will give us. Anyone want to ask any questions about that before we go any further?
Will you say the statement one more time?
I believe that the control of more capital will produce more wealth in your life than you owning more money or capital.
Control of capital will give you more control.
Now, let me say another thing. Warren Buffett has been stated to say this, and I have never been able to find the quote, but I love it, and I've heard several people say that Warren Buffett said it. He says every time he's lost control of his capital, he's lost money. And I think that Warren Buffett knows more about capital control than I do. So whether he said it or not, it's a great comment. Daniel, he's a rabbi, Rabbi Daniel Lapin says, I can say this because I'm a Jew. There's a reason why 33% of the Fortune 500 companies have a CFO or a CEO that's a Jew. Has nothing to do with their intelligence. God didn't give us an extra lobe in our brain to handle money better. And it's not that we're real Jews. We don't Jew people, okay? He says, the reason is that the Jewish mindset is taught from day one that the flow of capital produces wealth. And the more flow of capital that you control, the more wealth and value you will add to other people's lives. That's what I get excited about. That's what made me switch professions. I was working, helping one person at a time, and as David and I were talking earlier, we are now working to help generations at a time. And I think that's what needs to take place in this country if we're ever going to get our stamina back financially. And we're going to do it one person at a time because it's not going to happen in Washington, in my opinion. This is a little clip that we took off the news. It came out of Canada. It was the day back here in August when gold had been trading up around $1,800 an ounce and dropped $100 an ounce. And the news lady in the field is reporting why traders lost confidence in gold. And when I watched this clip, I laughed so hard because she said that the reason that traders lost confidence in gold is it's not backed by anything. She says, whereas the American dollar is backed by the U.S. government. I mean, this is, I wanted you to hear this. That's why we spent so much time doing it. It is hilarious, okay? And as an Austrian economist, that just tickled me funny. But what are we doing in the financial sector today? if we're not teaching someone something solid that they can take home and use and that is permanent, so your word permanent insurance is really key here. Why do they call permanent products like UL permanent? Isn't that a misclassification? I believe it is. Now, I'm not the one that's going to reclassify it, but I make sure that my clients understand the difference between guarantees and non-guarantees and being at risk. Because permanent means different things to different people. And they need to know the information so that they can make the right choice. Don't you believe that's true?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we spend this time with clients. We go over this. We draw the graphs out so that they can see the difference between term, that they can see the difference between universal products. And then we get in and we talk about what is whole life insurance. It's a blend between single premium and term insurance, and you get the best of both worlds. You get some guarantees along with it too, don't you? So what are one of the guarantees that we get with whole life insurance?
Death benefit's guaranteed.
The death benefit is guaranteed, yes. What's another guarantee we get? A guaranteed premium for life, isn't it? Or until it's paid up. What's another guarantee we get? Cash values, yes. And this is kind of a tricky one. There's one more guarantee, but it only happens after it's been given. And what's that? Dividends. If it's a participating policy, we've got another guarantee that once it's given, it's not going to trickle out the bottom of the bucket to pay premiums anymore, is it? Those are some neat guarantees. Doesn't that answer the very first page in your handout what Americans are really looking for today? Long-term, guaranteed, low-risk growth. Well, what is the risk in whole life insurance? With reinsurance, there's no risk, is there? Literally speaking. I mean, you can't say never, 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 but in hundreds of years of life insurance performance in this country, never, never, never has always happened, right? So we've got a product here that meets the needs of what most Americans are looking for. And I believe that every agent could be selling well over $1 million in commissions in whole life insurance if they understood what I understand. It's not something that I ciphered out myself. If it wasn't for Ray Poteet, Joe's partner, I would have never come across this. Everything that I'm sharing with you today, I've learned from someone else. And so our clients need to have the opportunity to learn that too, don't they? So I see myself as a teacher. I grew up in a family of teachers. My father was a teacher. I had 3 sisters that were teachers, had aunts that were teachers. My wife was a teacher, and I swore I would never be a teacher. But you guys know what the word doctor means? It goes back to terminology. It means teacher. Comes from the same word we get educate from. And so everybody's a teacher in life. And that's what we found out homeschooling our children. We're either going to teach them something good or we're going to teach them something bad. And we have the opportunity in a trusted relationship we are with clients to teach them the most important financial lesson that they can have. And that is to answer the dream that everybody has. And that is low risk, long-term growth with guarantees. So all of us have been in this industry long enough to know that not all whole life policies are designed the same way, though, don't we? No one wants to pay a premium for 4 years, 5 years before they have that guaranteed cash value, do they? So how can we get around that? Does anyone have a clue? With paid up additions, yes. And we can attach a rider to that policy and make a very attractive policy. So let's explore just a little bit here. A policy that I designed for a client that was 35 years old. She's a female. And she was, had bought into the idea that she was going to buy term and invest the difference. And so we wanted to explain to her her options, and then she could make an intelligent choice rather than just listening and following the masses and doing what they're doing. She wanted a policy that would be close to $500,000 of death benefit, and she had $10,000 that she was going to work with. So we designed this policy. As you can see, it has $432,000 of death benefit to begin with, and she pays a $10,000 premium. And yet, she's able to have cash values guaranteed in the first year of $5,700. Now, when we compare that to a term policy, we can pay $375.15 level term until this lady's 65. And it buys her an even amount of death benefit all those years. Now, what happened in the whole life policy that's different already?
Increase the death benefit?
The death benefits go up, yes. And she has guaranteed cash value, correct? So let's go through here. And how many are familiar with Todd Langford's Truth Concepts calculators? Has anyone ever been able to see those and view them online? If you haven't got those calculators, you owe it to yourself to go down to Houston, take his class, and buy them. They are the most fascinating calculators I've ever worked with. And you know what? Todd Langford, Truth Concepts. I don't ever show them to my clients. This is for me. This was to prove to me what was happening so I can explain. Now, maybe 1 out of 10 clients wants to see this, some CPA or somebody like that. But most clients don't want to even see these numbers. What we've done here, this calculator takes the whole life product that we just designed and the term product we just designed, and it compares the two. And what we can see here is that if you took $10,000 and bought term and you invested the difference and you were getting a rate of return of 8%, then after year 1, your cash value would have grown by $18 because you're investing the difference. That's the 8% growth. The next column over is what the cash values are in the permanent life insurance, the whole life product. And then this column over here takes and gives you the difference. Now, we can see that in year 15 here, what happens?
Cash value life insurance beats the investment account.
At 8%. Now, that's hoping that the market stayed at 8% every year.
Annually, yeah.
An annual 8% rate of return. We go out even further, and what we see on the tail of this is we see a huge cost increase as that 1-year renewable term, or level term in this case, starts increasing its premiums. Now, Joe and I were talking on the way in from the airport the other day, and he said something that really I'm going to start using. Talk with a couple that's 65 and ask the lady when she wants her husband to drop his death benefit. Have you ever got a yes on that, Joe? I've never used that before. But I just tell people, are you really going to want to pay that premium for this amount of death benefit? And the answer is always no. So this is just a truthful comparison between whole life and buy term and invest the difference. Now, took 15 years to kind of break even, didn't it? But that's not a true comparison because we've not compared a true apple to an apple. We're still comparing an apple to an orange because we didn't talk about the death benefit. If we look at the death benefit, when's the term product the most effective? Only in year 1. That's powerful. And you can show this on illustrations to people. You don't have to pull up this calculator because technology sometimes this gets people all crazy about numbers. They think the calculator's wrong or something. Let them do the math themselves. It's not that hard. So when we look at this, we have to then educate the client. What has the market really done? Is 8% even realistic? I love this chart. It came out of Bill Bonner's material. I don't know. Anyone read here Daily Reckoning? Good, Joe. If you don't, go to the web, sign up for it. Bill Bonner is one of the neatest people. Next article that I have in your hand is, can you recoup your bear losses? And I love this article because this happened right after the crash in 2008. In the bottom of the first paragraph it says, as crazy as it sounds, it's possible that that this year's market crash could even work in your favor. And then he goes on to say at the top of the second column over there, third column, it's just going to take 10 years at 12.8% every year. I mean, where did these guys pull these numbers? I mean, they're just crunching numbers, and people believe that, but they only believe it because these people are like the GP. They're very well financed by the drug companies. Okay, these people that are selling this stuff are very well financed by people that want you to buy this stuff. Because I'll tell you what, if there's enough UL and term products that are sold that are never going to convert, who is using that money to buy the stuff that we're talking about right now? Take a look at Barry Dyke's work, The Pirates of Manhattan. It's a website, go to it. You can spend 2 weeks on that page and watch the videos and the documentation. He's got a great book. He's got another book coming out this month. He proves what banks and large corporations are buying. They're buying single premium insurance. And what are they doing? They're doing the same thing that Joe and I teach all of our clients to do. And that is use the cash values to finance your lifestyle. And when you do, you'll get wealthy. Because what is that? That's the control of capital. It's a universal truth. And when we just plug into the universal truth that God created, things happen in our favor. So, by the way, I have an article in your paper too about the Dow bar. And I just like to kind of back up what I'm saying. It's the next page in your notes, so I'm not going to read it to you. You're very capable of reading yourself. We love cartoons in our family. This is a cartoon that was designed and actually produced by my wife's grandfather, Jack Hanna. He worked for Disney for many, many years, and this little cartoon was, Donald Duck was out on a limb. You've probably seen it 100 times as a kid. But the world is out on a limb financially. And the reason I put this little slide up here is that Walt Disney, as we all know, started Disneyland by having a loan from his life insurance. Does everyone know that fact?
Yes.
Okay. The bankers thought he was stupid, so did his brothers Roy. So he borrowed from his life insurance policy to do the demographics of where Disneyland should be located. And he came up with Anaheim, California. So that's why Disneyland is where it's at. Now, in your notes that I handed out, there's 2 more really fascinating stories. Who knows who Christopher Doris is? Anyone ever heard of Christopher Doris? Anyone ever hear of Pampered Chef? Pampered Chef was founded by Christopher Doris by buying $3,000 from her life insurance policy. Warren Buffett bought it from her for over $9 million. That's called control of capital. No one thought her idea would fly. Let's turn the page then to the next one. Anyone here, do they sell Foster Farm chicken here? Foster Farm Chicken, another story, life insurance loan that started that company. No one would loan them money. They borrowed $1,000 from their life insurance in 1939, bought an 80,000 acre farm in California, started Foster Farms. We could talk about Conrad Hilton, we could talk about J.C. Penney, we could talk about a lot of people that understood life insurance better than what we understand it today, or we would be doing it. But the point is here is people do not understand 2 concepts about the financial world. And now we're moving from the dissection and study of life insurance. We're moving into the dissection and study of the banking industry. Does anyone in here doubt that the banking industry makes money? And that we taxpayers bailed out the banks, and the banks now have no debt, but we're going to be paying on that debt forever? Yep. All right. So people often will tell me, I'm going to pay my house off in 15 years instead of 30 because I'm going to beat the banks. Does anyone believe that? Raise your hand. Does anyone not believe that? Raise your hand. Good. So we walk through this little story with them. We say we have a $250,000 home. And by the way, real estate is cheaper in Oregon than it is here probably. I don't know what, maybe not anymore. Las Vegas got kind of hit, didn't they? Okay. But, you know, if we paid 5% on this loan for 30 years, we can see over here the amortization table for that. We can take that same loan, that same mortgage at 5%, which the bank's not going to give you, by the way, for 15 years, and you see the amortization table on that. When we compare 30 years to 30 years, though, the cost of that house is identical, because we have to understand that we can't just box a 15-year window there if we're comparing it to a 30-year loan. We've got to look at that other 15 years after the house was paid. And if you could have taken your money and had it invested with the extra payments you're making in that 15-year mortgage, the cost is the same. In fact is, I was always raised to pay cash for everything. So when I learned this, my pants almost fell off, okay? Because if I pay cash for it, I end up paying the same as if I buy a 30-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage. Does everyone see what we're doing there? It's the time value of money, either working for you or working it against you. And Einstein said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. You either understand it and it works for you, or you don't understand it and it will work against you. We want it to work for our clients and for us. And so, which is more important to people? To own your home or to have the control of the money that would pay your home off?
Control the money to pay your home off.
When I first started doing what I do, I sat down and my home was $320,000 and I had paid cash for it because that's the way I was raised. And we refinanced it. I took the money out of my home. We bought life insurance products with it. And I did the math for the next 30 years. I figured, what is my house going to cost me if I pay this 30-year note off now? And what is going to be in my control if I'll put that money that I borrowed from the mortgage bank into life insurance and use it once a year at 10%. And in 30 years, my home, I would have paid $783,000 for it. But my money would have grown, or the control of my money would have allowed me to use $1.56 million. Which is better? It's not a brainer when it's no brainer when we look at it that way. But so many people don't look at it this way. And maybe part of it is they've never had a house paid off. But I remember the first house we bought with cash, and the next 3 years my practice struggled because we were in a new location, I was building a new practice. And I really at night had night sweats thinking that I wasn't going to be able to pay my taxes. What if you don't pay taxes on a house that's completely paid off? They come and take it from you. So again, it's the control versus ownership factor that we try to encourage our clients to look at and understand. And you know what? It's in our nature to want to be in control. And we should control, but we tend to want to control other people instead of our own resources. That's just fallen man or something, I don't know. So, but when we can control ourselves, this is what can happen. We're going to take that same whole life policy that I designed earlier in the worksheet, okay? We're going to plug it into Todd Langford's Truth Concepts Calculator. We're going to follow it for 30 years. And at the 30-year mark, just by paying our premiums, there's $373,000 that is available in cash value at that time. So what would happen if I took more control of that cash value instead of letting the insurance company control it? Do you think things could get better? Well, most people say, well, that couldn't happen because if I borrow from my life insurance, the insurance company is going to charge me interest. And that's absolutely true. And it's because they charge you interest that we can make it grow better. Because if they didn't charge you interest, this wouldn't work. So what happens here is if we'll take a loan from that policy in year one, remember we had $5,700 of cash value? If we'll take that and borrow it and pay it back at 10%, and we'll pay it, you know, over the course of 5 years, that makes the payment low, right? That means we don't have to work harder. That's why everyone buys things on time, is they don't have to work harder for it. It's there at a payment they can afford. That's the way Americans look at things. Can I afford the monthly payment? And if they will do this to themselves, then at the end of this time period, they increase the amount of cash values they have. Instead of $373,000, they now have $407,000. And they didn't have to work any harder to get there. All they had to do is learn the 2 rules that are known to all bankers. And that is, number 1, if you use someone else's capital, you lose interest, right? But what happens if you use your own capital? Don't you lose interest too? Isn't that the story of the house payment? It costs you the same regardless, one way or the other. And so what we want our clients to understand is if they can capitalize a policy and have a source to fund things in their life that they're already purchasing, they can improve their cash value, and you know what? They improve their death benefit at the same time. So if we can do this one time, can we do it more than one time? Sure we can. There's more cash value here in the second year. In the second year, they can pull out more money, $9,000 loan, and why this down here is 9360 instead of 9 is it's adjusted for 4% inflation growth. All right? Pay it back over a 5-year period of time. And what happens to the numbers again? Did it go up or down? It's 549 now. 459, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm not a numbers person, by the way. We can keep doing this. Now, eventually something's going to happen to this policy. And it's because of 1988. Does anyone know what happened in 1988 in our industry? That was the year the IRS said that you and I weren't good enough to buy single premium by itself. And if we get a policy up to where it looks like single premium, they're going to tax us and they're going to charge us a penalty again. So we basically create a glorified qualified plan here. So what we need to teach our clients then too is as this capital grows, what would be the best thing to do?
Take it out and put it in something else, I don't know.
Why not buy another asset? Yeah, right.
That's what I
And
said.
what kind of asset would you tell them to buy?
I don't know.
More insurance.
More insurance. Why more insurance?
Because it's worked so well, and that way you'll have another policy, it won't mess on you.
And we have more control, don't we?
Absolutely.
And there's something that we haven't even talked about yet, just barely briefed on, and that's dividends. I'm working with a dentist right now. He's putting, this works with any numbers, okay? Doesn't have to be big numbers or small numbers. It's a concept. He's putting $8,000 a month into a policy. And he says, I just want to pay the premium. Don't mess with me with all this stuff. You know, just put it there. I'm making good money, and I'll, you know, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, Robert, would you mind if you had $6.9 million of death benefit in 10 years versus 4.3? Would that bother you? And would you care if your dividend could be about $7,000 more without you working harder? He goes, well, that would be interesting. I said, well, why don't you take and use your policy to capitalize another one with? Does that make sense? You're recovering money here anyway that you would have lost to the market. And now that's what happens. The dividends start compounding in your favor, and you're just leaving a better blessing to people when you graduate from life. So he's excited about that. And I bet you every one of your clients would be too. You had a question.
Well, it's kind of hard to put this all together in such a short session. Would this make sense once you got this Todd Langford's thing a little better?
Todd Langford's
I'm a little confused.
Okay.
But,
I'll be honest with you. You buy Nelson Nash's book for $25 from Joe and read it.
Nelson Nash?
Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker.
Oh, I have that.
Okay, have you read it?
I read half of it.
Okay, you haven't got to the good part yet.
I know, I haven't.
Okay?
I read
The
half
good
of
part
it.
is on page 54, 59, 60, 61, and 62. When I read those pages, like I said, my pants nearly fell off. I cried because I saw how much capital I had wasted all my life by paying cash for everything. I literally cried.
So in your opinion, is it better to invest in life insurance versus a 401k then?
I do not believe that life insurance is an investment. In my state, we can't say that.
Yeah.
Life insurance is the best financial tool there is in the world.
Financial tool.
Yes. It is, bar none. There's no other place that you can put money and have liquidity and still earn a guarantee on it.
And be your own banker.
There isn't. So I try to tell my clients, let's not get into this either or battle. I'm not talking about investments. If you want to go and make an investment with this money coming out of this policy, all the power to you. If it was a good investment before, it's a good investment now. Because now you got both. You got the guarantees of the policy, and you got whatever whatever you're thinking is ideal out there to invest in. But I will tell you this. I teach my clients, you cover all your risks first before you go risking on someone else. Because who are you most likely wanting to write a check to every month? You or somebody else? It's easier to write a check to you, isn't it?
It would be, yes.
Yeah.
It would rather happen.
And why should we risk going out and putting our money someplace else and hoping that that works? And checking the papers every morning or the news to see if it did. Whereas we can just know that we're going to be honest with ourselves. And you know what? You have to eat, don't you? We have to wear clothes. We have to drive cars. We have to live in houses. And if you finance all those things in your life, you'll be so wealthy, you'll be surprised yourself. Okay?
So what you're saying is that you will be using loans from that policy to buy another one. Isn't that like a big question on the applications? Are you using loans?
Well, where is the money really coming from? And do we ever get it back into the policy before we buy another one? You know, this money won't fit into this policy. It'll become a modified endowment contract. So should I just let that money sit around, or should I buy a new contract with it? Does that help? Yeah.
And as long as you're not canceling the previous
No.
Okay.
No.
And then
Yeah. Good point. Yes.
To avoid MAC, do you then use that rider, DOT, dividend option term rider? Because that's where.
I'm not familiar with that term, Joe. I'm too new to the business. Tell me what it is.
In other words, in your case, you take the extra cash before it becomes MAC to get another one. But if you want to stay in the same policy, if you add dividend option term rider, and then to increase your face amount, because that's where, according to the IRS, that you will not become, you can dump in more money, it will not become a MAC.
We do use the term riders sometimes when people want to make a large contribution in the first year. Yes, absolutely. Good point.
Do we need to take a break?
So when we come back, we'll talk about a little flow chart that I take my clients through, because I have never shown this to anybody that they say, wow, let's do it. Okay, thank you for the feedback. It's always nice to know that what you're sharing is being appreciated. Something that was mentioned in the break, and this is really key, is that participation is so important. We're talking about control here, and remember all those term policies and UL policies that are going to collapse? Do you want to share in the rewards that the insurance company is getting from collecting those premiums? Yes or no? Yeah. So don't you think that we ought to have a permanent product, a whole life product that shares in those profits? And that's where the dividend comes in. And like it was brought up on the break, who said it? Okay, right here. those dividends are there regardless if you have a loan or not. So where else can you borrow money and have it grow for you at the same time? And that's Richard, is it?
Michael.
Michael, okay. Thanks for bringing that up. That's really key. So, we're all suffering with this, and some of us more than others. And, you know, I'm just appalled that we have lent $16 trillion to foreign countries like Libya and then bomb them. It's just, it's immoral. And these guys need to be audited. Does everyone agree with that? Okay, and held accountable. But this is a problem that we're looking at in America today. This is again from Bill Bonner's website, Agora Financial. In India, 75% of the people polled think that capitalism is the way to the future. In China, 75%. In Britain, it's almost 70%. In the US, more people think socialism is the answer. Government is the solution. Now, my 5-year-old, I was telling Joe last night, I probably raise him more like a grandson now, but he was at my parents' house and he said, you know, we just watched a video and it's talking about the Tower of Babel. And what was taking place there, Grandma, is that the little g was replacing the big G, and that's not good. And they call that socialism. And he has it right on, okay? That is what's happening in our society. That's what's happened in Europe. You know, Bill Bonner says that when Greece wants to go back and work 40-hour weeks instead of 30-hour weeks, then Germany will quit bailing Greece out. Until that happens, it's not going to work, all right? We're at a verge in our country where it's about a 50-50% here that people think government's the answer or that capitalism is the answer. And I think we're going to see what happens very shortly. And I'm hoping for my children that we go the other way instead of down this decline. But look at this. You know, Germany and the United States here on this poll are the only two countries that think socialism is a better answer than capitalism. So how do we teach our clients to take charge of their capital? You know, capitalism has gotten a negative connotation because we look at corporate welfare and call that capitalism. Well, welfare is welfare. It's an entitlement program to the corporations. That's just as evil as an entitlement benefit to the people that don't choose not to work. So we've got to get back to a true definition of what capitalism is. And I know no better book than The Richest Man in Babylon to teach that story. All my clients read it before I ever have a meeting with them. It's a $7 book. Come on. If someone's not going to be willing to put $7 on the table to get good information about what they need to do to get their life straightened out, then my time is better spent with someone that will do that. Do you agree with that? And once they've read that book, they also need to read Mr. Nash's book. They do that before they ever have an appointment with me, not because I value my time more, I value the people that I could be helping if this person wasn't cluttering my life up. And this is what The Richest Man in Babylon is a take-home message, is there's a principle in the universe called the 10-20-70 rule. Everyone here read Richest Man in Babylon? Okay. And it says that if you make $2,000 a month, and I try to keep my zeros to a minimum because it confuses people otherwise. And when we're working with top-end clients, they can add all the zeros they want. They're used to that. But, you know, we work with anybody. I don't try to prejudge. When I was a chiropractor, we were taught that you never judge a patient's ability to pay when they walk through the front door by how they're dressed, how they talk, or how they look. Because I've had little old ladies that I thought I was going to have to give my care away, go out and cash out a CD and pay their care up for a year. Okay? And when that happens to you, you start looking at people different. You let them tell you who they are before we start casting our opinions about. And as I work with clients now, I might sell a $100 policy a month to a student trying to recoup the cost of her books in school, but she has referred me a client that's writing a $100,000 policy a year. So we don't know where God is going to bring in those clients into our life. And I think that we sometimes, me included, I hope for the big cases because you have to work less, right? But at the same time, it's those little cases that get us fluent and really help us to maybe have some compassion and to really understand what it is that we're teaching people. Because if we can make this work with a student that has hardly any income at all, it'll work with anybody, right? That's what I keep telling my kids anyway. Okay, so if we've got these 3 boxes, and I started doing this, like I said, I'm not a numbers person. I used to do this on my desktop, and I would have different pieces of paper for every blue square up here. And I would get out fake money, and I would put money on the table and make the client go through these motions. The problem is that most people in America don't know how to add. And we would get some crazy answers. So I thought, okay, everyone knows how to push a button on a computer, and they trust computers, so let's get this in a PowerPoint so they can just follow it. So, following the 10-20-70 rule, if you make $2,000 a month, this is the way your income should be split up. It should, there we go. It should have $200 going to savings. It should have $400 going to your creditors, and it should have $1,400 going to your living. Now, again, I come back and I talk about control here. This is all a game of control. How many in here, I'll just ask my clients, have you ever tried to lose weight? Everyone's tried to lose weight that's over 20, okay? How successful was it? Well, I went on this diet, and I lost, 15, 20 pounds, but it came right back when I got off of it. I said, well, let's talk about that. Why did that happen? All right? Because you starved yourself. That's a crash diet, and you cannot sustain yourself on a starvation diet. You have to be able to function. Your body has certain things that have to happen for you to stay alive. You're going to get to the point that it's going to scream at you, and you're going to binge. That's just the way the universe works. It's God's creation, all right? So when people take this money right here and say, well, I can live on less than that. I'm going to live on $1,000 a month, and I'm going to get rid of my creditors quicker. They're asking to go into further debt. And how many of us have seen that happen with people? They'll pay everything off, and 6 months later, a year later, they're back in debt. Someone wins the lottery. 5 years later, they're worse off than when they did win it. Those are we know those are facts. So what we do is we say, whatever you do, do not violate this. This is a universal concept. Just accept it. You may not understand it yet, but let it work for you. Now, we also encourage people to take 10% of $2,000 from that $1,400 and tithe with it. Because the tithe is digging a tunnel out from you so that God and the universe have a chance to bless you at a later date. And if we're not digging those tunnels with our tithe, then we're just cutting off our blessings. Now, that's not mine. That's from the Thou Shalt Prosper. If you haven't read that book, you owe it to yourself. Okay? I'm sorry? Yeah. Let's say this person has a $10,000 debt. That's a big debt for someone that's making $2,000 a month, isn't it? Let's see how conventional planning would tell this person to get rid of their debt. They would say take $400 a month on that loan. Let's say it's a credit card at 12%. And in 29 months, you'll be debt-free. And that's true, isn't it? We can do the math. That's real simple. At the same time, if you're following this protocol, you'll have $5,972 in savings. If you're earning what Dalbar says, that 2% on rate of return. How many people are earning less than 2% right now in their savings? Lots of people. So I was tempted to make this a higher interest rate, but I wanted to make it real for people. So is there a better way to do this? Well, David Ramsey and Susie Orman think there is. And what would they tell you to do?
Term and invest.
They would say stop saving right now and get rid of your creditors. Okay? So let's do that. Let's put that $200 a month toward your creditor. What happens? Well, they're right to a certain point. What happens is that now, in 19 months, you've lost your creditor, and you've only paid him $994 instead of $1,564. At the same time, $0 at 2% for however long you want to keep it is still zero. So to do a real comparison and to see if the financial gurus are right, which they are, you will have more money if you compare apples to apples of the 29 months. Because now you've been able to save $600 a month for the remainder 10 months here, and you've got $6,457 in savings instead of the $5,972. But if this way is so great, what happens in the long run? And we're going to look at that in a little bit. But first of all, is there a better way to do this? And I was talking on the break somewhere up here to someone. I'm terrible with remembering your name, I'm sorry. We've got to think both. I believe that Jesus came to give us abundant life and the life hereafter, eternal life. So why don't we tap into what he wants to give us right now? And I'm not a name it or claim it person, so that's not where we're going with this. We're talking about using the concepts of universal truth and applying it to our finances. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Let's take that $200 a month. Well, why did we jump back here? I'm sorry. We'll get there. Here we go. Let's open a life insurance policy designed for maximum cash value, minimal death benefit, and let's put that $200 of savings into a life insurance policy as a premium. Now notice I didn't say we're saving $200 in life insurance. That's a no-no. As we all know, life insurance cannot be considered an investment, and it cannot be considered a savings account. But we can say, where is the best place to put your money if you're going to save it? Okay? And by this time, they should be able to tell you a life insurance policy. And when we do that, this is what happens. And I don't, you can run your own software with different illustrations, but when you look over the field, I represent 7 companies, and they're not that far apart, okay? If they're a good mutual company, they're participating, they've all got their pluses and minuses. But you're going to get something really close to this, all right? We've got $2,400 we paid in premium this year, right? We've got something that we wouldn't have had we just had a savings account. We've got almost $80,000 of death benefit, don't we? Face value. But more importantly right now is we've got $1,383 that we can put to use to get rid of our creditors quicker. And when we do this, this money comes and it's in the insurance company. We borrow it from the insurance company, and when we do, they need to make a profit, don't they? They're our trustee for our premium. If they don't make a profit on it, they'll never pay our death benefit. So we should rejoice that they're charging us interest. And they're going to charge $66.48 at the time I did this presentation on a 5.05 interest rate. But that leaves $13.16 that we can use, doesn't it? So we're going to take that money out. We're going to put it into a separate checking account so that we can monitor the activity of that. Every banker has a clearinghouse. Anyone in the real estate business in here? Okay. Clearinghouses are where your mortgage payment goes through, right? All right. That's all a bank is a clearinghouse. So we're going to treat this separate checking account as our bank. And from that, we're going to write a check and pay our creditors down earlier. Now, we have a choice now. By paying a credit card off earlier, what happens to your monthly premium, a monthly bill? Does it go up or down? It goes down because it's a recasting loan. In this case, because they're charging us 12% and the policy is only charging us 5.05, which is the best use of our money? To pay the creditor off early or to pay more premiums?
Pay more premiums.
It's more beneficial at this point in the game to pay our debt off quicker. So we're not going to reduce this $400 a month payment and put more money into our policy at this point. We're going to get rid of that monkey on our back quicker by keep paying them $400 a month, even though the payment is probably about $280 right now. All right? And when we do that in year 2, oh, here we go. We've got $1,441 that have built up in cash values in our policy because we're still putting that $200 a month there, right? We only need $424 to pay our creditor off because we've been paying them $400 all year, per month, okay? So when we borrow that money out of here, the $424 to pay our creditor off, the insurance company is going to charge us another $91. We pass that money into our clearinghouse, and that leaves $925 still at the insurance company we haven't used. That we could have if we wanted to. And we teach our clients how to use it maximally, but for this example. Now our creditor is gone, isn't it? So what can we do with that money? Now we can dump it into life insurance because we don't have a creditor anymore. So let's follow these 3 scenarios out, and let's see what happens in the long run. Now, my mentor's always saying, is life a sprint or a marathon? It's a marathon. Does someone want to win lots of little sprints and die early, or pace themselves and win the marathon? I've never met anyone that just wants to win a bunch of little sprints and die early. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at these 3 methods and see what happens down the road. We already know what happens to the first 2 because we've looked at them. But what happens is, you know, at 19 months in the conventional method 1, we're about half and half debt and savings. But we've already seen that at 29 months we have $5,900 of savings and 0 debt. But what happens if we keep going out? At 204 months, we've now accumulated $129,000, and that's because we've been able to keep that $600 keep coming in, earning that 2%. So it's compounding in our favor, like Einstein said. At 300 months, it's grown, and of course, at 360, we would expect it to grow. So if what the financial gurus tell us is really super great, we would expect conventional method 2 to show a much greater reward in the long run. So let's compare the numbers. At 19 months, we have 0 debt. That's good, but we have very little savings. At 29 months, we have 0 debt, and we have more savings than conventional method 1. But 204 months, there's not a tremendous amount of difference in 130,441 and 129,792, is there? When we're looking long term. And we keep going out here, and when we get out to 30 years, $275,930 is not a whole lot of difference than $275,089. Would you agree with that? We'd expect a much greater rate of return on that, the way that the financial gurus hype it all up. So let's compare it to what would happen if we paid that creditor off and did our life insurance policy at the same time. And what we see is that at 19 months, we have more savings than we did in conventional method 2. And we can't call that savings, it's cash values. All right? We have less debt, but we've got something that neither of the other 2 have, and that's a protection for our loved ones if something should happen to us. We've almost got $85,000 of death benefit. And so what I find is that the people that are really interested in doing this are people that love their family, that love certain charities that they're working with already, that value other people's lives. Because most other people say, why worry? Okay? Keep coming down, and as you'll see, these numbers, by the time we pass the 204-month mark, the life insurance way of get rid of your debt is ahead of the other two methods. Plus, we have nearly over $750,000 of death benefit. Is this guy working any harder in either of these methods? It's the same cash flow. It's just that this bottom method, IBC method, is he is in control or she is in control. By the time we get to 30 years, there's almost $1 million of death benefit and $357,000 of cash value versus $275,000. And I ask my clients, which one would you prefer? And they always pick IBC. You see, people have never been told the difference. They've never been educated. Education comes from the word elucidate. Elucidate means to show the light on something. That's our job. And if we can do that, we have benefited people so much that they will be literally eternal grateful for you. And you know what? That cash value can grow even greater if they do other things with it. Now, someone mentioned the modified endowment contract, and every one of these policies will become a modified endowment contract if we're putting that much money into it. So what does this do for us as an agent? It simply means that we have to sell them another insurance product. And that's not a bad thing, is it? Okay? So if we look at conventional method 1 and compare it to conventional method 2, there's literally no difference in the line in the time value of money. But if we'll draw the time value of money that is created from using the infinite banking concept with a whole life insurance policy, now we can see what the real growth, our control is going to be of our money. And this shows here how we have to stagger that cash flow to make this work. This won't all fit in one policy. It would become a modified endowment contract. And so what we do is we start other policies along the way. And it's fun. It gives people a chance to realize that they truly are in control more than they thought. And that's always a good thing. So, you know, as a chiropractor, I was having my patients read this book, and, you know, they didn't want to read it. And it was too big, and it was awkward. It was, you know, 8 by 10, and they made all kinds of excuses. And so as I began to teach this more and more, I realized that I needed to try to do something to spark an interest in people to read Nelson's book. I mean, I would literally today pay $1 million for his book without batting an eye. And how many months has it sat on your desk, and you've got how far through it, Bonnie?
Probably about 6.
Okay.
I'm terrible, sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to read it after my Series 6.
I don't mean to pick on you, but you volunteered, so we'll use you as an example. Okay?
I've seen this 3 times, and it's starting to sink.
Yeah.
It's detailed. I mean,
Have
I love the stories in that book. The
Okay.
stories in that book are
You read pages through pages 62, and then you call Joe up and you go talk to him about it. And you'll see, and then look at page 70, because 70 is a summary of pages 54 and 59, and it shows that all profits don't go to the insurance company, they go to you. They go to your clients. And that's a good thing, isn't it?
Is it bad to think now, and I don't know if this is a dumb question or not, so I don't want to, is it shy, but is it bad to take your money out of a 401k and put it in an investment tool?
I'm not securities licensed, so I can't talk to you about what you should do, but I'll tell you what I did.
Fair enough.
Okay?
That's fair.
And I tell my clients that same thing, because if I was security licensed, I couldn't tell you this. All right? When I understood the time value of money, and I could control it, I took and paid the penalty at age 45 and all the taxes.
I did that to start my
All right.
business, so.
And then what I did is I bought life insurance with that. And I've used some of those dollars now over 10 times, and each time they've made me between 10 and 15% without me working harder. And they're never going to pay a dime of tax again.
So the benefit here is getting whole life with paid up with additional ability to add money to,
With the dividend
interest,
option to
the
buy more
dividend
paid up
option.
insurance.
okay.
But, you know, and there's a lot of mutual companies out there, I'm not going to name any, that provide that dividend option, but don't allow you to put a rider on the policy at the very get-go. That's not necessarily an evil thing. It's just that you're going to have to wait for 3 or 4 years before there's really anything worth borrowing out of that policy.
Right.
So if you can get a company that will allow you to put the rider on the policy right at the get-go, and maybe a term rider on it too, so you can dump extra money you have just sitting around that's earning 0.2% or something in there. Now what's happening, all that money's working for you while you go
Term with a
and use it.
deposit fund, they term it with a deposit fund added to it too.
So
Same thing.
it's just so fun. And you know, Jesus came to tell us the truth, and the truth will set us free.
See,
And this is just another truth. It's you're not going to find it in the Bible per se, but it's a truth nonetheless, and all truth sets us free. So, how am I doing on time?
We got time for questions.
By the way, there's 3 more articles in your handouts. Let's just talk about them real quick. I go over this with my clients too. It's really nice because Warren Buffett made a big old stink about this just recently. And he said that we should be paying more taxes, didn't he? He should be paying more taxes. Why would Warren Buffett want to pay more taxes?
so we could put more money in the life insurance.
Because he's not paying them as it is.
Well, these 3 articles go back clear back to Bloomberg Newsweek's Valentine's Day 2005. And I read that article at the time I was doing research for my book. And these other 2 articles just came out this summer. And what I found out in that first article in Bloomberg is that Warren Buffett has made his billions by deferring his tax liabilities. Now that was strange to me because I was always taught to pay what you're owed right away. But if Warren Buffett owes $1 million in taxes, and he knows that Uncle Sam is going to charge him a 10% interest fee on that if he doesn't pay it, but he knows he could make a 20% rate of return somewhere else, what do you think he does? He lets the government wait. He gives them their 10% and he makes 20%. Yes?
I'll qualify my remarks by telling you that I know Warren Buffett. I was
Yes.
raised just right down the street
Mhm.
from him, so I followed him in detail.
Yes.
And this article, of course, it came from the New York Post, and anybody knows anything about newspaper, you take what the New York Post says and you divide by about 70%.
Okay.
Right? Okay, the dispute going back on this particular tax matter goes back to the year 2002.
Yes.
And what the Post had done here is they commingled Warren Buffett's own earnings against the corporation. Now, according to Forbes, the corporate rate was affixed at 29%. Now, there's not a corporation in the United States with today's breaks and loopholes that's paying 29%. And you heard Governor Romney last night said he pays about 15%.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the dispute has been
The corporate level versus the personal
That's
level.
right.
You're exactly
That's
right.
So this article really is not factual, and the veracity would be challenged.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I'm not condemning Warren Buffett because I admire what he's doing because it's exactly what I'm teaching people to do. Only we're doing with their life insurance instead of their tax returns.
The dispute by his auditors and by his accountants and so forth is to be where are they between the 29% that was affixed by, according to Forbes,
Yes.
down to the level that I believe, according to the most recent statistics, S&P, a fourth of the top 500 are paying less than 17%
Yeah.
in taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And you know those the New York Post and the Newsmax article, I just threw in there because it was a relevant topic. But the Bloomberg article is actually very favorable in teaching people to mimic what Mr. Buffett's doing. So thank you for bringing that up. Is that a good thing to do or not? It's a good use of money, isn't it? And so we're doing that, except when we pay back the interest, and this is where pages 54 and 59 will show you that interest really goes to your bottom line in the long run. Okay?
Anything else, Joe?
I just want to recognize Dr. McFie and thank you for being here and flying down, taking taken 2 days out of your life and out of your business and out of your family. And I'm glad you're here, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
My pleasure.